they are just one of the greatest acts of all time. And they are one of the acts I truly adore. Greetings everyone, I'm TC Kirkham. Welcome to Influencers. This new show is a way of my sharing with the vinyl community the artists I love and why they were an influence on me, as I grew up and became a music fan. Each episode is going to focus on one artist and show off my collection and talk about them, and I hope you'll find it interesting. In the meantime, if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up for a like and the bell so you'll remember when you'll get a reminder when I have a new episodes up. And by all means, leave a comment. I love to talk to you. Starting off today with the first episode of Influencers with the band, or the act, they're not really a band, they're a duo, that played the biggest formation of my pop sensibilities. And I, of course, am talking about Karen and Richard Carpenter, collectively known as the Carpenters, or just Carpenters is technically their name. I was 7 when their first big hit happened, and I was also 7 when I picked up my first album by them, and I have bought almost everything. Some of the stuff, I've got all the vinyl that I have here. I have some CDs we'll talk about also. And I haven't been a total completist in that area. I haven't, gone out of my way to get their stuff from the UK or Britain or Japan. Just the American stuff for the most part, although I do have one import album. I've been collecting them since I was 7 years old. I just got this copy of this album last year. This was the first exposure I had to them. This is Close to You, their second album. Features their hits Close to You and We've Only Just Begun. It also features a lot of great album tracks, and a lot of people, this is a good copy. I just bought this from Dawn and Mary at Two Chicks, I believe, last year. Let me grab my ratty old copy right here with the tape on it and marked up to shred on the back. There's some great stuff in here. I love the Carpenters' take on the Beatles' Help. I think it's a very unique, very psychedelic version of that song, and I've always loved that. I also love the song called Mr. Gooter, which Richard and his songwriting partner John Bettis wrote about their boss at Disneyland's Tomorrowland Terrace, and Richard later said he wished he hadn't done it. Richard also shares vocals on several songs, and he also sings I Kept on Loving You on this album. This was my first big exposure to them, and later that year they would reissue the first album, and I picked it up pretty much immediately. I have not replaced this one yet. This is again shredded. Had it since I was 7 years old. Not in the best of shape, although not in terrible shape either. Ticket to Ride. Now, when it was originally released, it was released as Offering. Those are impossible to find for less than $300 or $400. I'd love to have it, but I'm not willing to spend it. This album has 2 of my favorite songs by Carpenters that were never released as singles. All of My Life, which is a beautiful ballad, and Eve, which is also a beautiful ballad, both written by Richard and John Bettis. Really show off Karen's voice in the best possible light. At this point, Karen was still very much the drummer and did most of the drums on some of the songs. It was pretty amazing. This one has started the what they would later continue in a couple of other albums, an opening and closing song that were fairly short, Invocation and Benediction in this case. There's a lot of great stuff. Richard gets pretty equal time here. He has leads on 4 songs. And of course, the only single from the album was Ticket to Ride, another Beatles cover, which Richard did as this lush ballad. I have to be honest, I've always preferred the Carpenters version of that song too. Probably because I heard it first. I didn't hear the Beatles' original Ticket to Ride until I was maybe 10 or 11. So I really love the Carpenters version of this. This was originally released in 1969 and was reissued under Ticket to Ride in 1970. Offering is a grail, and I will eventually, grab it because I don't have it right now. The third album I also bought a better copy of this last year is the album simply known as the Tan album, Carpenters, and it is the envelope album. On my ratty old copy, I will show you that it opens up into a portrait of Karen and Richard. This is the album that cemented them as true superstars. It was also the album that introduced the recognizable Carpenters logo. I was still young at the time this album came out, 7 or 8, and I played this. At the time, I had a little tiny kids record player. I was allowed to use the stereo maybe once or twice a week, when nothing was going on. So I usually used my little kitty record player, and it didn't do the best control of these. But this album, this is the one Carpenters album that has 0 duds on it. Some of them have songs I don't care for. I mean, I'll be honest, a couple of songs on Ticket to Ride are okay, and Close to You, there's a couple that I'm not really fond of, but everybody else seems to like them. This album, every single song is awesome. Rainy Days and Mondays, monster hit. Saturday, a great up-tempo comical song from Richard, great. Let Me Be the One, finally released as a single off of From the Top in 1992, sorry. Great, one of my favorite songs by Karen. A Place to Hide Away, a Randy Sparks tune. They had worked with him when they were still in Spectrum, their jazz band. Great song written by him, and for all we know, the power of the single of which got the song nominated for an Oscar, even though it's not the version in the movie. This album also includes Superstar, the Leon Russell, Bronnie Bramlett song that is one of my favorite songs, and I've heard a lot of people sing it. The only one that even comes close to Karen's version is Eric Martin's version from his album Timeless, and I think it came out in 2008. Unbelievable. Drusilla Penny, another great little number from Richard, talking about a bratty teenage girl. One Love, another one of my favorite songs, and one that they showcased that summer when they hosted Make Your Own Kind of Music, along with Herb Alpert, Mark Lindsay, the Doodletown Pipers, Al Hurt, and Sandler and Young, I think, were the regulars on that show. One Love, one of my favorite love songs of all time. I wish they hadn't used a specific name in it. They used the name Stan. I think it would have been better if This Man. The Bacharach David medley, which includes Knowing When to Leave, Make It Easy on Yourself. There's always something there to remind me I'll never fall in love again. Walk on by, and Do You Know the Way to San Jose, it was a medley, and it only runs, I think, 5 minutes. Great stuff. Karen showing off her marvelous vocals for Burt Bacharach stuff. She's easily my second choice with that stuff. Dionne Warwick will always be the first for Bacharach stuff. And Sometimes, written by Henry Mancini, who put music to a poem that his daughter wrote, and Karen just does amazing work with it. Again, credited to producer Jack Doherty, even though Richard did most of the production himself. Top-notch album. Not my favorite, my second favorite, but this is, if you can you only get one Carpenters album and you're wondering which one to get, this one is the one that you should probably be getting without all the writing and crapping, all the damage to it. 1972 brought A Song for You. This is the original release. I have this I've had this since it was out. Has the cool flap on the back. I bought one, a better copy, a more recent, not more recent, but a textured. This is actually textured. Bought this from Record Crate. I'm looking at getting 180 gram versions of everything. This album, with I think one exception, is another true gold album that I mean, this is the one that seemed to have gotten the most critical praise, even though Carpenters was nominated for a Grammy, the Tan album. This one is, again, phenomenal from beginning to end. I mean, there's just no bad songs. There's songs that people consider weak for the Carpenters. I still like them, but I would agree, as a single choice, that was one of them was not the best. A Song for You, Leon Russell song, he was known for doing it, kicks off the album. Also, a reprise ends the album. Fabulous vocal from Karen. The original album version of Top of the World is on this album. The single version came from the singles 1969 to 1973. We'll talk about that in a minute. Cover of Hurting Each Other, which Karen and Richard made their own. It had been a hit for Ruby and the Romantics before. It's going to take some time. Carole King, great artist, great songwriter. This song was okay as an album track. As a single, it proved to be a miss because it missed the top 10, and it was the first song that missed the top 10. And while I love the song overall, I think I would have went with one of the other songs on the album as a single rather than that one. Goodbye to Love, of course, changed the way people looked at the Carpenters thanks to its fuzzy guitar solo by Tony Peluso. Magnificent work. I had a babysitter who loved Goodbye to Love and hated the flip side, which I'll get to in a minute because it's one of my favorite songs. And then there's a little song we used for 3 or 4 years on Subject Cinema as our halfway break. It's called Intermission. It lasts 22 seconds. And it's Karen and Richard overdubbing their own voice about 20 times, singing "We'll be right back after we go to the bathroom." It's hilarious if you've never heard it. Side 2 kicks off with Bless the Beasts and Children, which is actually from the film this time, not just a cover of a film song. Flat Broke, or Baroque actually, is Richard's piano solo here, along with Piano Picker, which he is talking about playing the piano. I Won't Last a Day Without You was a return to the Paul Williams, Roger Nichols catalog. They, of course, wrote Rainy Days and Mondays and We'd Only Just Begun for them. It was released belatedly as a single about 2 years afterward. I think it should have come out instead of It's Gonna Take Some Time. I think it would have been a bigger hit because it was being covered by so many acts at the time. Andy and David Williams, who I've featured on my Obscuria show, it was their first single as Andy and David Williams, the teen pop stars, before they became the Williams brothers. It was recorded by Paul Williams himself, a number of other people. Paul was best known for it because he did it on all the talk shows and a couple of variety shows and stuff when he was guesting, and it was terrific. The flip side that my babysitter hated on Goodbye to Love is this adorable song called Crystal Lullaby. Crystal Lullaby is split. It's one of the few songs that I really love that is split between Richard and Karen on vocals, and it's talking about a little girl having dreams, and it's just fantastic. Another song that I love that a lot of people don't get, and I don't know why, is Road Ode, which is pretty much the tale of life on the road. When they were recording this, they'd been on the road for almost 2 years straight. And that's proof of that's in the new book I talked about a few weeks ago. They didn't write it, but they did an amazing recording of it. And you can tell the perspective of the person singing the song is like, I love performing, but damn it, I just want to go home sometimes. And Road Ode is one of my favorite Carpenters songs. The album ends with A Song for You, which is just the reprise, which is kind of an echoey version of the opening song. Again, you can't go wrong with this one either. Next up, Now and Then from 1973 was released just around the same time as American Graffiti, and as a result, it really benefited from that. Now, this house that you see in the background was their home in Downey, California. It's since been razed. What a shame. Now and Then also features the extremely well-known and unfortunately lividly hated portraits of Karen and Richard. On the inside, Richard has mentioned numerous times how they both grew to hate those paintings. I think they're well done. I actually need to pull the album out of the sleeve for this because it doesn't have anything on the cover. Side 1 begins with Sing from Sesame Street. A&M thought they were nuts for recording this song, even more nuts when they insisted it on a single, and ended up hitting number 3 on the chart, and it was a big hit. Another song that has been recorded over and over again that was written by Leon Russell, This Masquerade. Of all the covers, I think Karen's was first, and not to take any shade away from George Benson's Grammy-winning exquisite version of the song, Karen's is better. I'm sorry, it just is. It was a hit overseas, too. It was released as a single overseas. Heather is an instrumental piece, a beautiful piano instrumental piece from Richard, that you will, if you were watching television in the 70s, and particularly the Lawrence Welk Show, I'm sorry, Richard, you would hear the song. It was used and adapted, actually. Richard heard it there and adapted it from a jingle that was used for Geritol. It's a beautiful song and really showcases Richard's piano work. The next song on side 1, Jambalaya, is their remake of the Hank Williams classic. It was a monster hit in Japan and in UK. It was not released as a single here in the States, but it's still a great version. I Can't Make Music, which was written again by Randy Edelman, who they'd recorded on several other things by. Terrific writer, and he's a good match for Karen and Richard. Side 2 is a concept album, and I'm going to show you the label because they don't have it on any writing on the label anywhere. Now and Then, the now is at side A, the then is side B. Opening and closing with their original song Yesterday Once More, another big top 3 hit. It surrounds a medley of 50s and 60s classics, all woven together by a crazy DJ played by, once again, Tony Peluso, and it's just wonderful. My mom wasn't fond of this. She was, God love her, she's not with us anymore. She was a Carpenters fanatic. We listened to it a lot when I was there, when she was in her final days, and she loved them to death, and but she did not care for this medley. The medley includes snippets, not full songs. I don't know, it's kind of like a television length performance song, like you'll see on Dancing with the Stars or one of the talent shows. So 1.5 to 2 minute versions of Fun Fun Fun, The End of the World, Da Do Ron Ron, Dead Man's Curve, Johnny Angel, The Night Is a Thousand Eyes, Our Day Will Come, and One Fine Day, equally split between Karen and Richard. It's great. It's fun. It would, Tony Peluso would reprise his DJ imitation on the exquisite, long, full-length version of Calling Occupants 4 years later, and it was, it's really something. I mean, there really is nothing bad to say about this album either, except that I know they wish they had more time to do it because they were, again, on the road, and they recorded it in 3 weeks, which I thought was crazy. This was their final album for almost 2 years. They went in the studio only when they could. They were touring constantly, and so in the meantime, a greatest hits album would come out. Let me pull that out first here. The singles, 1969 to 1973, Richard later regretted weaving each song together with interstitial music. I think it's great. Later pressings, I guess he's removed that, but I loved it. This is an original press from 1973. It was waiting under the Christmas tree that Christmas morning because it came out in December. Hit #1 in January. It's their only #1 album. And featured at the time, I no longer have it here, it featured a booklet with lyrics and stuff, and I wish I still had that. And a pretty appalling photo of Karen and Richard. Richard complains a lot in the book, the new book, that they did not take great pictures of them most of the time. This included um, the single version of Top of the World with the twangy guitars that had been used in the hit version by Lynn Anderson 7 months earlier. Lynn was actually the first to have a hit with it. This includes all the singles, as it says. And then, after this, during the summer of '74, they released finally Off of a Song for You, I Won't Last a Day Without You, which it didn't do that well. I think it peaked at #11. It deserved better. Now, of course, in between, they have some Christmas singles, and I'll talk about those in a minute. I don't have the albums out, but we'll talk about them. 1975, Richard feels this was rushed. I don't agree with him. I do wish they had done full songs instead of the smaller opening closing again. But 1975's Horizon has been and always will be my favorite Carpenters album. This album, which features a fairly decent portrait of the two of them, opens with a short, they use the same melody with different lyrics. Aurora is the opening song, and Eventide the ending song. And the other 8 songs on the album, are all Karen at her utmost best. Only Yesterday, to this day, still my #1 all-time favorite Carpenters song. I will always love that song. Desperado, her cover of the Eagles, magnificent job that she did on it. Please Mr. Postman, which was the third and final #1 hit they had nationally. A cover of Irving Cantel and Sammy Fain's I Can Dream, Can't I? Complete with orchestra. Mind-blowingly good. Solitaire, not one of Karen's favorite songs. In fact, Richard said she loathed it. One of her best performances, though. And really hot. I don't know if that was stemming from the fact that they had had a falling out with Neil Sedaka when he opened for them in Vegas, and he got better reviews than they did, and they didn't like it, and so on and so forth. So is said. It could be apocryphal, I don't know. The best Carpenter song never released as a single, Happy. It was the flip side of Only Yesterday, and it should have been an A-side. The first use I can remember of serious synthesizer in Carpenter music, and the song is just so well produced. It's amazing. I'm Caught Between Goodbye and I Love You. Another Richard and John original that Karen's vocals just shine on. And Love Me for What I Am, again. This one with John Bettis and Palma Pascal, one of the other people he wrote with frequently. Karen is at her utmost best at this on this album, and I know Richard feels like it did not. He actually finally took production credit on this. Comes with an inner sleeve with another decent photo. It's the first time. Now they were getting fairly decent photos, and lyrics, of course. Horizon. I don't know what it is about this album, because I love everything. I love everything they do, but this album is special to me, and I don't know why. I got it the day I had my allergy tests for the first time. It had just come out, and we had stopped at the store, and I said, "Mom, can I get this?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, grab that." She loves Carpenters, and she loved this album too. So, Carpenters, Horizon, 75, favorite album. Between Horizon and the next album they released in the States, there was another album released in Great Britain. And it was never officially available in the United States, but some stores, in my case J.C. Penney, carried a few imports from a company called JCM Records, and this was one of them, and so I grabbed it. Carpenters, Live at the Palladium. This is a bitch to find now, but at the time you could get it in a lot of stores. This was released in the UK primarily, and it's mostly, side 2 is a long medley of most of their big hits. Side 1 is Richard opening with Flat Baroque, Kind of Hush. Well, actually, this may have come out after Kind of Hush. Jambalaya, which had been a big hit in Britain. Another medley of classic Gershwin and Randy Edelman starting off with Piano Picker. Richard doing the Warsaw Concerto, and Karen from this moment on, Cole Porter, which would later show up on, I think it was Interpretations. I'll have to check when we get there. That was later released domestically in the States. Again, great album. Glad I have it. I don't know. It's good. It's just typical Carpenters. Released in 1976, A Kind of Hush is considered the Carpenters' weakest album, and it really shouldn't be. There are weak points on it, and Richard feels like it really bombed out. I know. But truthfully, all the songs on it are well recorded. 3 of them I consider in my top 20 songs by them, and one of them is not a single. Their cover of A Kind of Hush was a great song, and it could have, they were, I don't know if that was Richard or A&M that was pushing them into the remake vein, since Please Mr. Postman had done so well. Another Randy Edelman song, You, terrific song. Sandy, Richard Carpenter and John Bettis, not the Sandy from Grease. Very cool song. Another interesting choice for a single, which ended up becoming their lowest of all the charting singles on the Hot 100, Goofus from 1930-something, written by Wayne King, but their treatment of it was fantastic, and it did considerably better on the AC chart. And Can't Smile Without You, which a year and a half later would be a monster hit live for Barry Manilow from his live album. They did it first. They did a good job. I mean, I don't have a problem with their version. Side 2 kicks off with Karen's favorite song of all of theirs, I Need to Be in Love. I have to be honest, that's one of the weaker points on the album. I'm not a big fan of... I like the song, don't get me wrong, I do like the song, but I could pull 2 other songs off here that would have been better singles, and it peaked at number 25, which was just ridiculous. Song called One More Time, written by Louis Anderson, which is okay, it's pretty good as filler. Boat to Sail, written by Jackie DeShannon, is a mind-blowing song. I love this. It's one of my favorite songs of their entire albums, and deserves better than it gets noted by most scholars who are picking this album apart. I Have You, another great John Bettis, Richard Carpenter original. Terrific song. Also would have been a better single than I Need to Be in Love, along with Boat to Sail. And their cover of Breaking Up Is Hard to Do. So they weren't pissed at Neil enough to not record his stuff anymore, obviously. It more closely resembles of the different versions of that song that have been a hit. It more closely resembles the Partridge Family version from 1972. It doesn't resemble the original that much, nor Neil's remake of it that was a hit about a year before this came out. That was a ballad version, terrific version. All in all, it's not terrible. It could be better. And here's the obligatory photo. I don't think it's as bad as many people think it is. Maybe it's me. I don't know. Another favorite album that really divides people is the experimental album. That is 1978's Passage. This album was meant to be experimental, and this album is also the first of all their albums that shows that Richard was having difficulties. He would later enter rehab for Quaalude addiction after this album came out. But I have to be totally honest, for me. Is it my favorite Carpenters album? No. Is it one of the worst? Not by a long shot. A lot of people consider A Kind of Hush a terrible album. And I don't think it's that bad either, but it's definitely not as good as Passage. Passage is the only album since it was introduced that only features the Carpenters logo very tiny on the back. And it was an experimental album. Richard was experimenting with a bunch of different sounds. He did not want to produce this, but he couldn't find anyone else that would do it for them. And two specific things came off this album. Their very first and only country chart hit, Sweet Sweet Smile, and a song that was a smash around the world except in US, Calling Occupants of Interplanetary Craft. Buonascino Home, side 1, song A, an old song from Michael Franks, who'd written it a few years earlier. It's good. I like Karen's vocal. It was different. It's very jazzy. All You Get From Love Is a Love Song, which was the first single, deserved better than it got. I thought it would do better than that. I Just Fall in Love Again, which 18 months later would be a big hit for Anne Murray. And I don't know what Richard was thinking. They recreated a whole scene from Evita on this album, and he now thinks it was a mistake, and I have to agree with him. It is the one Carpenters track I never play. It is... I have a little bit of ring wear there, so I'm going to have to go into the booklet. On the Balcony of the Casa Rosada, Don't Cry For Me, Argentina. And, I mean, they had so many people involved with this. They were way over budget on this album. And it just isn't that great. That song is just not that great. Side 2, as a whole, is good again. Sweet Sweet Smile kicks off side 2, which was a number 8 country hit for them. Two Sides, a great typical Carpenters ballad. Man Smart, Woman Smarter, Karen's kind of updated version of a classic Harry Belafonte song. And the classic seminal version of Calling Occupants of Interplanetary Craft, which was first released on Klaatu's debut album a year before. This song was a monster hit in Japan. It was a monster hit in Ireland, in the UK, in the Netherlands, and it peaked at number 32 in the States. It deserved way better. I cannot say that enough. The production work, it's still one of their fan favorite hits, even though it didn't sell that well in the States. In between time, between 1978's late 77's release of Passage and 1981's Made in America, there was nothing. They released a single in 1978 called I Believe You, which was a remake of Dorothy Moore's hit of the same name a year earlier, and it would later surface on Made in America. But there was a whole bunch of songs recorded that didn't surface until way later, after Karen's passing. And we'll talk about Karen's solo album in a minute. 1981 was their comeback, Made in America. Richard thinks this is a great album. It's a good album, not a great album. And I'm sorry, Richard, if you ever see this. I love you and your sister so much. This album is not all that and a bunch of chips. There are 3 or 4 songs that are real stinkers on this album. Oh, I take that back. Can't be real, not real stinkers, but they're not Carpenter standard. These Good Old Dreams, great song, didn't do well as a single. Strength of a Woman, one of my favorite songs they've ever recorded, and it's fantastic. Want You Back in My Life Again, they released this as the second single from the album. I don't think that was a wise move either. Number one, the keyboards are not played by Richard Carpenter. They're played by Daryl Dragon of the Captain's Neil. Number two, Karen's vocal is top notch, but the rest of it sounds almost Casio keyboard. I'm not a fan of that song, surprisingly enough. When You Got What It Takes, another great Carpenter's classic. Somebody's Been Lying. I have to be in the right mood. It's a good song. It's typical Carpenter's downer stuff, but it's not a great song. I Believe You is good. Side 2. I Believe You is good. It's not that different from Dorothy Moore's version, but it's good. Touch Me When We're Dancing, which was the comeback single, I thought would do a lot better. Look, this is a great picture, but they don't think so. Touch Me When We're Dancing was originally released by Bama, which was later Alabama, and they later had a hit with it on the country chart. Great song, and deserved better than it got. When It's Gone, It's Just Gone, another standard Carpenter's song. I know Karen and Richard love the oldies, but Beechwood 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, no, it should not have made this album. There were other songs I've heard that have come out that were recorded for this session and for the albums beforehand that didn't get released until at least Love Lines, and it should have replaced one of these. Any of those should have replaced Beechwood. I just don't like it, and that's a rarity. Because We Are in Love, the wedding song written for Karen's wedding. Unfortunately, her marriage lasted less than a year, but it was it's a beautiful song. And this was the final album released while Karen was still alive. She would be dead less than 2 years later. In fact, this Thursday, February 4th, is the 39th anniversary of her passing. And the album that emerged about 8 months after her passing was Voice of the Heart. This includes so many good things that could have been on Made of America, and they weren't. And first of several posthumous releases of unheard material, including a new re-recorded version of Make Believe It's Your First Time, which was the first single from the album, did well on the AC chart, and was originally on Karen's solo album, which we'll talk about. There isn't a bad song on this album. And I can't really criticize the album because Richard was working with material that was recorded before his sister's passing. Now, Sailing on the Tide, You're Enough, Make Believe It's Your First Time, and Two Lives make up side 1. At the end of a song, Ordinary Fool, Primetime Love, Your Baby Doesn't Love You Anymore, and Look to Your Dreams make up side 2. I would have liked to seen Your Baby Doesn't Love You Anymore on Made in America in place of Beechwood 4, 5, 7, 8, 9. Ordinary Fool, I believe, also appeared on her solo album. I've talked about that day and a couple things in print, but I've never actually talked about it on camera. February 4th, 1983, Entertainment Tonight aired at 7 o'clock in the evening in our station in Columbus, Ohio. I was living in Lancaster at the time. It was a top story. I had not heard it all day. Of course, we didn't have the internet, and at the time, we didn't have any news channels on Lancaster cable. So, I was unaware of it. I was by myself. My mom was at work. and I lost my shit. I spent the next 3 hours upstairs in my music room playing my Carpenters albums and bawling my eyes out. And that's the honest truth. Mom came in and asked me what was wrong. She couldn't figure out what was wrong, and I had to explain through my tears what I was so upset about, and she understood. Because Carpenters were that important to me. And they still are, in many ways. Getting into the stuff post Karen's passing. The first thing to emerge was Richard Carpenter's debut solo album, Time. Some of this is Richard instrumental, some of it is Richard singing, and some of it is Richard playing for other singers. Dusty Springfield appears on the album. A marvelous, then still new, young actor named Scott Grimes appears on this album. Richard would later produce Scott's album. It's really good. I was really impressed that Richard had put together something like this. It was the only pop album he's done. He's done a couple of instrumentals, and he spent most of his time remixing other stuff for the Carpenters act. But this is a great song, and Something in Your Eyes with Dusty Springfield was a monster hit on the AC chart and deserved to be. Time, when Time Was All We Had was another example of Richard's overdub talent, himself overdubbing, talking about life before Karen passed away, and it's fantastic. I really wish that this had done better. He was really terrific. In 1991 or 92, this came out in the early 80s. This is when Karen was just passed away. Yesterday Once More. It's a double set. I have the British. Is this the US or the UK? This is the UK pressing. I have the American pressing too. There's 3 different songs on each one, and this is all their big hits and some of their album hits. Anyway, from the top, as you can see, it got terribly ruined by sun bleaching, or something was on it or something. Is a 4 CD set running in segments 1965 to 1970, 1971 to 73, 1974 to 1978, and 1978 to 1982. A lot of this stuff had never been released. Looking for Love, which is Karen Carpenter's single on Magic Lamp Records from 1966, is on here. Some of the stuff from the Richard Carpenter Trio and Spectrum is on here. There's a lot of stuff from the albums on here. A great Spanish language version of Sing is on here. Jingles they did for the Suntory Pop Company in Japan are on here. And for the first time, Richard released several tracks remixed his way from Karen's aborted solo album in 1980, one of which was a disco tinge song called My Body Keeps Changing My Mind, which to this day I still think could have been a monster hit for her in 1980 had they let it be released. They didn't, and the album was shelved until 1996. This set has some great stuff. It has been repackaged, and let me see if I still have it here. Let me see. Lots of individuals box sets from the top. It's been repackaged as the Essential Collection. So everything on this is on the Essential Collection. I think they may have dropped one thing, but it's pretty cool. Okay, let's get into stuff I only have on CD or digital because I don't have access to them, but I'll have to pull up the covers. The first one is the 2 Christmas albums. Christmas Portrait, released in 1978, was their first Christmas album. It featured the re-recorded version of Merry Christmas, Darling, which became a hit all over again. Karen always felt that her vocal on the original single in 1970 wasn't as strong as it could have been. It also has a new up-tempo version of Santa Claus is Coming to Town. It was not the one that, despite what Wikipedia says, was not the album that carried the slow ballad version that I played on Obscuria over Christmas. It was an up-tempo song. They were issued later. It was later issued on the second album, An Old-Fashioned Christmas. This album is mostly Karen, with Richard, of course, on keyboards, and it's mostly traditional Christmas songs or songs that Karen sounds terrific singing, like the Bach Gounod version of Ave Maria. It's a typical Christmas album, and there were several things added to it when it came out to CD. And I wish that there had been a little bit more complete package. I wish they'd included Santa Claus is Coming to Town, the ballad version, because it was impossible to get until the second album, An Old-Fashioned Christmas, released after Karen's passing in October 1984. An Old-Fashioned Christmas was stuff that was originally recorded during the original Christmas portrait sessions, and also for a couple of their television specials. And it includes Karen's hit version of Little Altar Boy and the ballad version of Santa Claus is Coming to Town, which was a hit in 1974. Both of these albums are great for Christmas fare, and you know I'm a Carpenter sucker anyway, so of course I'm going to say that. In 1989, it had been a number of years since Richard had released anything by the duo, and he had released a single in 1987 of a song they had recorded during the Made in America sessions called Honolulu City Lights. Not one of my favorite songs by them. Love Lines, 1989, became the first album exclusively released on CD. It has now been reissued on vinyl as well. Love Lines showcases Karen at her best with songs that never made earlier albums. Love Lines, the title track, which was written by Rod Temperton and came originally, I believe, I think it came from her solo album. Where Do I Go From Here? The Uninvited Guest, If We Try, When I Fall in Love, and Kiss Me the Way You Did Last Night. All great songs. Remember When Lovin' Took All Night, You're the One, Honolulu City Nights, Slow Dance, If I Had You, and Little Girl Blue make up the second side. If I Had You was released as the first solo single by Karen Carpenter. It came out on a cassette single when this album came out in 1989. And Slow Dance was recorded back during the Made in America sessions, was never released at any time. If you're familiar with my love for Christy McNichol had recorded the song for their album in 1978, and Carpenter's version was fantastic, and of course I had a chart in 1989. Slow Dance went all the way to #1 on my chart again, because it's just a great song. This album has some real gems. Richard was holding back and deserved to be fantastic, and it was. Now, in 1996, fans finally convinced Richard to release Karen's solo album. Simply titled Karen Carpenter, it was recorded from May of 1979 through January of 1980, finally released in October of 1996. She was very disappointed by the shelving of the album. Richard was worried that it would, break up the duo. Herb Alpert said not to care for much of it. Ultimately, nothing ever came of it. But in all honesty, with the release of the album, several songs had come out on other recordings. Love Lines was on Love Lines, so was If I Had You, and Remember When Lovin' Took All Night, If We Try. They were remixed Richard's way. Now, this album was released the way Phil Ramone, the producer, intended it to be released. Richard didn't touch it. It was released as it was originally intended. In all honesty, it has some great stuff, but they made the right decision in 1980. I think releasing a couple of songs as singles until Made in America came out as solo hits by Karen would have been enough to keep them in the public eye. Because there's 2 or 3 songs here. It's not that they're bad, they're just bad for her. They're not the right song. Without a doubt, though, the best song on the album is Leslie Pearl's exquisite disco masterpiece, My Body Keeps Changing My Mind. That could have been a monster hit. She did a great job with Making Love in the Afternoon, a duet with Peter Cetera. And of course, we knew that the best songs were already on Love Lines. I didn't really care. I don't really care for Still Crazy After All These Years as a song. Anyway, Karen did a great job with it, but I still don't care for the song. I do like the original version of Make Believe It's Your First Time from her album better than the one that they re-recorded for Made in America that didn't come out until Voice of the Heart came out. Karen's album is on Spotify and digital services, so if you want to hear it, you still can. And it's a good album if you've never heard it. Released in 2003 in America, or was it 2004? Sorry, 2004. It's the final album with original material on it, as far as most people know, from Carpenters. It was called As Time Goes By. And in between it and there was another one. Let me go back to that first. Interpretations, which came out in 1995, was mostly songs that had already been released, but it did contain 3 unreleased songs. Their version of From This Moment On, which had never been released in America officially. It was only on the Live at the Palladium album. Trying to Get the Feeling Again, which is recorded the way it was originally written. Barry Manilow had asked for a bunch of changes when he recorded it. And Without a Song, which was also heard on their special Music. It's only a minute long. The rest is all previously released material. Some of it has been remixed, excuse me. And but it's all great, and it's a great standard, and I like their version of Trying to Get the Feeling. As Time Goes By was mostly non-released stuff when it came out in 2004 or 2000. Internationally, 2004 came out in Japan in 2001, and here in the States in 2004. I wish Wikipedia would make its mind up. Got to get the original date. This included the full version of Without a Song, a medley of Rainy Days and Mondays and Superstar, their version of Nowhere Man, a Gershwin medley that appeared on the Live at the Palladium album, Dance in the Street, Dizzy Fingers, You're Just in Love, a medley of classic songs with Ella Fitzgerald, Star Wars Close Encounters medley from their television special Space Encounters, excuse me, a Magic Memories album medley Karen and Perry Como did for another special, Leave Yesterday Behind, their version of California Dreamin', which is terrific, their version of The Rainbow Connection, which is awesome, and another medley of their earlier hits, and a song called Winnie Smiles, which is also a pretty good song. As a whole, I don't know why it took Richard so long to get these out, because they're all pretty good stuff. Had to do with copyright discrepancies from what it sounds like. But I really think that it's got a lot of great stuff in it. And to this date, it's the only new album to come out with new material. They did release an album I have not yet purchased that came out last year, although I listened to it on Spotify, and it's magnificent. Carpenters with the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra. Richard went to London 2 or 3 years ago, had them play with Karen's original tracks, and it is phenomenally good, because most of them do not have the full orchestration that these versions do, and they're all terrific. There was a singles album released in Britain that I never did pick up, that is available online also, and that's the singles 1974 to 78. It includes 2 songs that weren't released as singles, Happy and Can't Smile Without You, and it does not include Goofus, which was released as a single. And I Won't Last a Day Without You is included here. Again, this album was released only in Britain. We were able to get it here in America via importing, but I never picked it up because I already had all the songs. that covers pretty much the entire library. There's other compilations and stuff that I haven't picked up. The Carpenters have been a very important part of my life, as obviously I've spent close to an hour talking about them. Without Karen and Richard Carpenter, there would have been no TC today. I really believe that I probably wouldn't have gotten into music or collecting if it wasn't for them. I truly love Karen's voice. I think she is the greatest female singer of all time. There are some that come close. One thing you might want to seek out online is a terrific tribute album recorded by Australian singer Dami M. She represented Australia in Eurovision in 2016 and later recorded an album of all Carpenters material called Classic Carpenters, and she does a bang-up job. Karen would be damn proud of her. There are tribute bands out there. They're not bad, what I've seen of them. Nobody can ever replace Karen Carpenter. Nobody should try to replace Karen Carpenter. She was one of a kind. Their music has touched my life for all but the first 6 years of my life, and I'm pushing 60. And I will always love them. They are one of my go-to acts for what I listen to. They are definitely an influencer of my life in music. I don't think there's a lot of you that haven't heard the Carpenters. I know there's some younger VC members that have been trying to find out about them. Kate's Crates was listening to some of them and falling in love with them last year. If you're a younger VC member and haven't listened to the Carpenters, do it. Carson, Jack, you guys are heavy metal people. Try a dip on the other side and see what you think. There's a reason that some of today's rock and roll superstars consider the Carpenters an influence. If you want to hear that, check out If I Were a Carpenter, the 1994 tribute album, which includes Sonic Youth, Shonen Knife, Dishwalla's debut, a whole bunch of other great acts. And Richard personally approved it. It was worth it, and definitely check it out. They will always be important in my life. I know of several other people in the VC who feel the same way. And even though she's been gone for almost 40 years, she never really leaves because you never stop hearing her music. Not a year goes by when there isn't a Carpenter song in a movie or a TV movie, and it doesn't bring them right back. Usually it's recognizable, Top of the World, Please Mr. Postman. Occasionally I've heard This Masquerade a couple of times. Everybody has been influenced by Karen and Richard Carpenter, and they should be. They are just one of the greatest acts of all time, and they are one of the acts I truly adore. And one day I will get offering. For Influencers, I'm TC Kirkham. We'll see you soon. Ciao, baby.